Next up, we have Peter Nelson, who's done a lot of work on atmospheric sciences and land management and citizen science. So Peter, please take it away.
I will. Thank you. I have my view set up differently. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about some of the work that I've been doing, which is both technically challenging, but also challenging in terms of the reliance on other people, both taxpayers as well as generations of people continuing to do their part over time. And in particular, I use satellite imagery to not only teach informal education to audiences, like at the university, at Oregon State University, where I'm currently located as a senior instructor, but also I do a lot of outreach to everybody else on Earth. Because for me, the stakeholder really is this kinship relationship that we have, both in backwards in time, those that set up and actually launched these satellites and created these sensors that I'm now able to do some really cool things with. But all of that, is an important thing to think about, the past stakeholders, the current stakeholders of humans, and really the future humans, and all of the non-humans that are around us on this planet at that moment in time. And so this time component, this how do we think like a mountain idea? How do we think long term? How do we deal with or think about things like climate when we're having to deal with our day-to-day issues? That's a really hard thing to bring to communities of all types and stakeholders, regardless of how or who they really are. There is this memory of the world that has been captured in our satellite record. In particular, I work with a data set that is foundational, and it started in 1972, and it goes all the way until right now. It's still collecting this data. And I'd say one thing that I really have a hard time doing is helping people to understand that they're in this system. They're contributing to this system, whether they like it or not. Their activities have actually been recorded, whether they like it or not. And there is kind of this really interesting thing that, again, kind of goes back to some of our conversations are very much this moment in time, but we're not the first groups to be having these conversations. And land management, resources, where we're arranged on this world, who's making the choices, are all reflected in this data set that spans generations. And I want to highlight that it's an evolving thing that does require people to be a nexus of it. We have to have people who are thinking about other people and trying to provide the foundation in terms of the methods and procedures that make data accessible to the rest of us. It hasn't always been like this, and it may not always be like this, but it takes people to really encourage sharing of this information that connects all of us, whether we're at the top of the mountain or the bottom of the mountain or at the North Pole or the equator, and where we are in our moment of time. We're living with choices that other people have made in a lot of cases and frameworks that other people have made. I find satellite imagery is a wonderful way to step away from some of those cultural impositions that a map can actually provide. And so that's why I keep struggling at trying to get this into people's lives, because we've seen that as the technology has changed, as we now have mobile sensors in everybody's pockets, we can now start engaging people in the science and in this, and not just have the ivory tower, as it's been called, those special few engaged in seeing Earth in both time, our moment in time today, 2023, but also how that moment fits within the longer time frame that we're not going to be here for. So with that, this idea of water is something that I think ties a lot of our communities together and a lot of our community engagement together. So I want to just highlight that, one of the things is having that infrastructure that allows us to reduce some of the digital divide. That if we go to the next slide, I want to really highlight how this could be a barrier. And you might hear about this in other lightning talks. This opportunity to divide if we're relying on only participating in the digital space. Now, in my opinion, it brings us together in an inclusive way. It actually broadens participation to people who previously might have been left out. And I've seen that, and it's a really important piece to this fundamental science and taxpayer science that is the Landsat program that has been going continuously since 1972. I wasn't part of that decision. Many of us here weren't part of that decision, but there is another satellite that is coming online shortly. It's getting planned for. And so to me, that leads into this next really important question about data sovereignty. Who owns this data? This has been a question since the very first launch in 1972 when that satellite went up. So it's not new. But we've had evolving ideas around this. And to me, this is a really important piece that as Earthlings, at this moment in time, we all should have access to fundamental data sets that help us to understand the nexus of our food, energy, and water systems, right? That is foundational. We've seen abuses in the past. We will probably see abuses in the future. Data sovereignty and how do we work together with all of this information is really powerful, and it will lead into the choices that the next generation has. And that's our responsibility at this moment in time. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to come here and to bring up not only the technological problems of trying to use the wonderful tools of satellite data, remote sensing, digital imagery, all of these wonderful things that we're currently living in that no other generation has been able to experience. But how do we do that in a responsible, ethical way that gets us over some of the issues that have come up in the past that restrict our options today? So thank you for that. And I would love to hear any questions that might be out there.
Thanks, Peter. Opening the floor, any questions to start with?
Just a stupid one. How do you get access?
How do I get access? So one of the great things is that it used to be you had to pay for it. The very first satellite image actually was advertised, and people sent in and they got photocopies of the satellite image in their area. Well, we're now living in digital times, and so there's a lot of different places that you now have access to, and this is the expanding piece. One of the places that almost all of us use, not to endorse anything, but Google Earth or Google Maps. When you are zoomed out from space, you are actually looking at the satellite imagery that all of us have paid for. It's that Landsat imagery. And all of the other derivative products that are out there are wonderful things that you can take advantage of because Google has taken our taxpayer-funded data and they've moved it into their system, and they're doing all kinds of wonderful things to open up the access to us. However, it's a private company. We always have to wonder, are they going to be here in 20, 50 years? That takes us back to this data sovereignty piece and really needing to think long-term about not only the data we're collecting, but the value for the future generations that all of that has. I get asked the question a lot of times, how do I get access to this? Why is this kind of hidden? Why do only some people get to access this? And that to me is a problem with not having the resources, not having the infrastructure at that moment in time. And it's a really wonderful moment here where the maps, the information are all becoming more accessible to us. But I want to bring, Steve, to this. Be skeptical about whatever is presented to you. Do you know the provenance? Do you know who created it? Do you understand maybe why they're presenting it to you in that way? And when we talk about the fundamentals of food, energy, water, that has a lot of history that holding back information has been to the detriment of a lot of people. So knowledge is power, but one of the big things is getting that knowledge out there in a way that people can actually understand it and they don't have to have me actually interpreting what we were looking at. It is something that is a day-to-day activity that I can guarantee everybody's doing now, because with students, with community engagement, I don't have to describe what a satellite map is anymore. It's right there on your phone. Most people use it. And so that has been a transformation. And what's going to happen going into the future is really going to be interesting. And so I appreciate this group thinking about these rough, tough questions. And Steve, that was a long answer to, it's out there on the internet in every map browser that you have. And I will gladly point education and communities and highlight what we'll be doing in the month of May in 2023 for our Where is the Water Challenge, that will highlight all of this kind of stuff so that it is accessible to communities.
Well, we have to move on in the interest of time, but Peter, please send us lots of information about that so we can send it out to the RCN and get all of our colleagues and students involved. I appreciate that. Great work.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to invite everybody to join us in the fun of doing remote sensing.
Yeah. We'll get those STEPS folks involved too.